Have you ever spent years studying English, only to freeze completely the moment a native speaker asks you a simple question? If that sentence just made your heart sink, then you are exactly where you need to be. Stay with me for just the next 10 minutes, and I promise you, what you learn today will fundamentally change your relationship with the English language. Forever.
And welcome to the English podcast that actually works. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Sasha, and we are here to tell you that the problem is not you. It was never you. The problem is the method. For decades, we've been sold a lie. The lie that language learning is about memorizing grammar rules, filling out workbooks, and repeating pointless phrases like, "the pen is on the table." When was the last time you urgently needed to say that?
It's true. I struggled with traditional methods for over a decade. I had the textbooks, I had the vocabulary lists, I could pass any written test. But the moment I tried to speak, my mind would go blank. It was frustrating, embarrassing, and I almost gave up. I thought I just wasn't talented. But then I discovered something completely different, a way of learning that isn't about study, but about acquisition. And it changed everything.
That's what this podcast is all about. We're going to tear down everything you thought you knew about learning English and rebuild it from the ground up with a method that is faster, more enjoyable, and actually gets you to fluency. Today, we're introducing the core concept, the one idea that will shift your entire perspective. We call it the English filter. And understanding it is the first step to breaking free.
So, what is the English filter? Imagine your brain has a barrier. On one side is your native language, your quick, intelligent, and fluent thoughts. On the other side is English. Every time you want to speak English, you have to take a thought from the native language side, push it through this filter, which is filled with grammar rules you're unsure of, vocabulary you're trying to recall, and a heavy dose of fear, and hope something comprehensible comes out the other end. It's slow, it's inefficient, and it's why you hesitate.
Exactly. Traditional learning adds more and more stuff to the filter. More rules, more exceptions, more vocabulary. It makes the filter thicker, more clogged. Our method is different. We teach you how to bypass the filter entirely, how to start thinking and feeling directly in English, so the language comes from a place of intuition, not calculation.
Think about how you use your first language. You don't construct sentences, you just speak. The words are connected directly to your feelings and ideas. Our goal is to get you to that same point in English. It's not a magic trick, it's a trainable skill. And over the next episodes, we'll give you the tools to train it.
So if you're ready to stop translating in your head, to finally speak with confidence, and to understand movies and songs without subtitles, you are in the right place. This isn't just another English lesson. This is a new way of thinking.
Let's dive a little deeper into why that filter exists in the first place. It's not your fault. It's a direct result of how most of us were taught. From day one in a traditional classroom, the focus is on accuracy. The teacher gives you a grammar rule, you practice it with 20 sentences, and then you get tested. If you make a mistake, you lose points. This conditions your brain to believe that making a mistake is bad, dangerous, something to be avoided at all costs.
So, when you're in a real conversation, your brain isn't focused on communication. It's focused on error avoidance. It's screaming, "Don't use the present perfect wrong. Remember the third person S. Is that the correct preposition?" This mental panic is what causes the long, awkward pauses. You're not slow, you're just terrified of being wrong. But here's a fundamental truth that liberated me. Native speakers do not care about your mistakes as much as you think they do.
That's so important. They care about understanding your meaning. They care about the connection. Think about it. When a non-native speaker talks to you in your language, do you judge every tiny grammatical error? Or are you just happy and impressed that they are making the effort to communicate? Exactly. You give them grace. Native English speakers are doing the same for you. We need to shift your goal from speaking perfectly to speaking connectively.
The fear of mistakes is a huge part of the filter, but it's not the only part. The other major component is what we call the translation trap. This is the habit of mentally constructing a sentence in your native language and then trying to translate it word for word into English. This is a disaster for two reasons. First, languages don't work that way. The grammar structures are different, the idioms are different, the cultural context is different. And second, it doubles your mental workload. You're not just speaking English, you're also running a full-time translation office in your head. It's exhausting. This is why you feel so tired after a short conversation. You're doing two jobs at once. The path to fluency is to shut down that translation office, to start building a separate, direct pathway in your brain for the English language itself.
So, how do we do that? How do we weaken this filter and build a new direct pathway? The answer lies in a concept you might have heard of but probably haven't been using correctly: comprehensible input. This is the secret sauce. It's not just about listening to a lot of English, it's about listening to English that you can mostly understand. When you understand the message, something magical happens in your brain. It acquires the language naturally, without any conscious effort or memorization. It's the same way children learn. They don't study grammar rules. They're exposed to thousands of hours of language that, through context and repetition, they slowly come to understand. Their brains are wired to pick up the patterns. Your adult brain still has this ability. We just need to reactivate it with the right kind of input. In our next segment, we'll break down exactly what comprehensible input looks like in practice and how you can get it, starting today.
So, comprehensible input. It sounds technical, but it's beautifully simple. It's the foundation of how we acquire language, not learn it. Acquisition is subconscious. It's what happens when you're so focused on the message, the story, or the information that you forget you're even listening to another language. Your brain is absorbing the patterns, the grammar, the vocabulary, and the rhythm automatically. Learning, on the other hand, is conscious. It's sitting down with a textbook and memorizing a list of irregular verbs. Both have their place, but acquisition is what builds fluency. The key is in the name, comprehensible input. It has to be understandable. If you listen to an advanced university lecture in English and you only understand 10% of the words, that's not comprehensible input. That's just noise. It's frustrating and your brain will tune out. The ideal zone is what linguist Stephen Krashen calls I plus 1. The I stands for your current level. The plus 1 is the next small step, the little bit of language that's just slightly above your current ability. You understand almost everything, and that context helps you figure out the new plus 1 part. Let me give you a personal example. When I was learning, I loved watching sitcoms. At first, I used subtitles in my language. Then I switched to English subtitles. I could understand most of it because the visual context, the actors' expressions, and the simple conversational dialogue made it comprehensible. I wasn't studying the dialogue, I was just enjoying the show. But my brain was working. It was connecting the sounds of the words to their written forms and to the situations. I was acquiring language without any stress.
That's the perfect example. You're focused on the story, not the language. And that's the mental shift we need. Stop studying English and start using it to consume content you genuinely enjoy. Your mission is to find your own I plus 1. For a beginner, that might be a podcast for children or a cartoon. For an intermediate learner, it might be a vlog about a hobby you love or a drama series with clear pronunciation. For advanced learners, it might be a complex documentary or a novel. The content itself must be compelling to you. If it's boring, you won't stick with it.
This is why forcing yourself to watch the news in English can be counterproductive if it's too difficult. The vocabulary is complex, the speed is fast, and frankly, it's often not very engaging. You need to fall in love with the process. Find a YouTube channel that makes you laugh, a podcast that fascinates you, an audiobook that you can't stop listening to. When you are emotionally invested in the content, the acquisition happens much, much faster. You're not just learning words, you're living experiences through English.
And this brings us to a critical tool: repetition. You don't need to hear 1,000 different difficult things once. You need to hear a few hundred comprehensible things 1,000 times. Re-listen to that podcast episode. Re-watch that scene from your favorite show. Let the language patterns sink into your subconscious through repetition. This is how you start to develop a feel for what sounds right, what we call grammatical intuition. You won't be able to explain the rule, but you'll know that I have been to London is correct and I am been to London is wrong, simply because it feels wrong. So we have our foundation, massive amounts of compelling, comprehensible input. But how do we make sure we're not just passively listening? How do we actively engage with the content to accelerate this acquisition process? This is where we move from just hearing to truly listening. There's a big difference. Passive hearing is like having the radio on in the background while you cook. Active listening is sitting down with headphones, focusing entirely on the sound, the rhythm, and the meaning.
And to make this active listening effective, we want to introduce you to a simple but powerful technique. We call it the three-phase technique. You can apply this to any piece of content, a podcast episode, a short video clip, a scene from a movie. It's designed to move you from comprehension to acquisition efficiently. You don't need to do this for hours. Even 15-20 minutes of focused practice like this is more valuable than 2 hours of distracted, passive listening. Let's break it down. Phase 1 is simply for enjoyment and global understanding. Listen to the segment once, all the way through. Don't pause, don't look up words. Just try to understand the main idea. What is the topic? What is the general mood? What is the key point the speaker is making? This mimics a real conversation where you don't get to rewind. You're training your brain to grasp the gist, even if you miss details.
Phase 2 is for detailed comprehension. Now listen to the same segment again, but this time pause it. If you heard a word you don't know, but you understood the sentence's meaning from context, let it go. But if you hear a key word that blocks your understanding of the whole sentence, then and only then you look it up. The goal here is to resolve any major misunderstandings. You're filling in the gaps, turning incomprehensible parts into comprehensible ones.
Phase 3 is for absorption. Listen to the segment a final time without pausing. Now that you understand it fully, you can relax and let the language wash over you. Pay attention to the music of the language, the intonation, the word linking, the rhythm, the pauses. Your brain is now free to absorb the grammatical structures and vocabulary in a deep way because the meaning is clear. This third listening solidifies everything. The pattern gets etched into your neural pathways.
This technique is so effective because it aligns perfectly with how the brain learns. First, you get an overview. Then you solve puzzles. Finally, you master the material through repetition. It turns a simple podcast episode or a YouTube video into a rich learning resource. You're mining it for all its linguistic value. And because you chose content you enjoy, this process feels engaging, not like a chore. The next time you find a short piece of English content you like, try this three-phase technique. You will be amazed at how much more you get out of it. And this leads us to our next big topic, output. Everyone wants to know, when and how should I start speaking? We'll tackle that and the myth of speaking perfectly right after this.
So, the big question, when do I start speaking? This is one of the most controversial topics in language learning. The traditional system forces you to speak from day one. Repeat after me. Hello, my name is. But our approach, based on how acquisition actually works, is different. We advocate for a strategic delay. We call this the silent period. The silent period is the time you spend focusing entirely on input, on listening, before you feel any pressure to produce speech. Think about a baby. They spend about a year just listening to the language around them before they ever form a coherent word. During that time, their brain is building a massive database of sounds, patterns, and meanings. When they finally do speak, they have a deep, intuitive foundation to draw from. You can do the same thing as an adult, but much more efficiently.
Forcing output too early is one of the main reasons for fossilizing mistakes and building a strong accent. If you start speaking when your mental database of English is very small, you will have to fall back on your native language's grammar and sounds. You'll force English words into the sentence structure of your first language, which leads to errors that become very hard to unlearn later. By allowing yourself a silent period, you give your brain a chance to internalize the correct rhythm and structure of English first.
Now, this doesn't mean you don't speak for a year. The length of your silent period depends on your personal comfort and your level of input. For a complete beginner, it might be a few months of dedicated listening. For an intermediate learner who has had bad speaking experiences, it might be a few weeks of shifting to this new input-focused method. The goal is to wait until you feel words and phrases starting to bubble up naturally in your mind, until you find yourself thinking simple thoughts in English without trying. That's your signal that your brain is ready to start producing.
But what about my teacher who says I must practice speaking to improve? This is where we have to be smart. There is a difference between forced, high-pressure speaking and low-stakes, private practice. During your silent period, you can and should engage in private speech. This means speaking when no one is listening. Shadowing is a perfect technique for this. You listen to a short, clear audio clip, and you try to imitate the speaker exactly, like an echo. You're not creating your own sentences, you're just copying the melody and the sounds. This trains your mouth muscles and your pronunciation without the stress of being judged.
Another fantastic private practice is talking to yourself. Describe what you're doing. I am making coffee. I am walking to the window. The sky is blue. It sounds silly, but it's incredibly powerful. You are using the language to express your own real thoughts, but in a safe, zero-pressure environment. This builds a direct connection between your experiences and the English language, bypassing the translation filter. When you finally do speak to another person, it won't be your first time forming English thoughts. You'll have been doing it for weeks.
So release the pressure. Give yourself permission not to speak until you feel ready. Focus on filling your brain with comprehensible, compelling English through listening and reading. Let the language sink in. Let it settle. The output will come. And when it does, it will be more fluent, more accurate, and far more confident because it's coming from a place of acquired knowledge, not fearful memorization. So let's say you've respected your silent period. You've been consuming compelling input for weeks or months. You're starting to understand more, and you feel those first impulses to speak. What now? How do you cross the bridge from understanding to actually producing speech without triggering the old panic and the translation filter? The key is to start small and start smart. We call this process opening the output valve.
The biggest mistake people make when they start speaking is trying to say something complex and profound. They want to discuss their philosophy on life or a complicated news story. This is a recipe for disaster because it immediately forces your brain back into translation mode. Instead, you must start with the simplest, most concrete things possible. Your first spoken sentences should be so simple that they require zero mental translation. You're just labeling the world around you.
This is where your private practice, like talking to yourself, becomes your best friend. But now we add a new layer. We move from just describing actions to expressing your genuine, simple feelings and opinions. The language you use in your head should be the language of a child first discovering speech. It's not about being impressive, it's about being authentic and direct. For example, instead of forcing yourself to say, I believe the economic ramifications are quite significant, you would say, this coffee is good, or I'm tired, or I like this song.
The goal is to build a direct connection between a feeling or a sensory experience and an English word or phrase, without the detour through your native language. When you taste the coffee, the feeling of good should trigger the word good in English directly. When you feel tired, the word tired should surface. This is the foundation of thinking in English. It begins with these tiny atomic units of meaning. The more of these direct connections you build, the more stable your spoken English will become.
Another powerful technique at this stage is to use set phrases or chunks of language. These are common phrases that native speakers use all the time. Instead of constructing, "What is your opinion about this?" from individual grammar rules, you acquire the whole chunk. What do you think? Instead of, "It is not my preference," you learn, "I'm not really into it." By learning and using these ready-made phrases, you sound more natural and you reduce your mental processing load dramatically. You're not building a sentence from scratch, you're using a prefabricated block.
And the best way to collect these chunks? From all that comprehensible input you've been consuming. When you're watching your show or listening to our podcast, pay attention to the little phrases people use all the time. That makes sense. I see what you mean. How's it going? That drives me crazy. Write them down, not as individual words, but as a whole unit. Then practice using them in your safe, private self-talk. The next time you're alone and a thought like, "that makes sense," comes to mind, say it out loud in English. You are slowly stocking your toolbox with real, usable language.
Remember, fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about being able to smoothly connect the words and phrases you do know to express your thoughts. By starting with these simple, direct expressions and useful chunks, you are laying the strongest possible foundation for fluent speech. You are teaching your brain that speaking English is not about complex construction, but about simple, direct expression.
Now let's address the giant elephant in the room, the fear of making mistakes. This fear is the single biggest dream killer for language learners. It creates a mental barrier that is often more difficult to break than the language itself. We've talked about it before, but now we need to weaponize you against it. We need to change your very definition of what a mistake is.
The first step is to understand that mistakes are not failures, they are data. Every time you make a mistake, your brain receives valuable information. It's a signal that says, that way of saying it didn't work. Let me try a different path. This is how your brain fine-tunes the language. Without mistakes, there is no learning. Think of a baby learning to walk. They fall down hundreds of times. Do we call them failures? No. We understand that each fall is teaching their brain and body how to balance. Your language mistakes are the exact same thing. They are not a sign of your inability, they are the proof of your learning process.
I want you to reframe your goal. Your goal is not to have a perfect, mistake-free conversation. Your goal is to have a successful communication. And successful communication happens when the other person understands your meaning. If you say, "I go to the store yesterday," it's grammatically incorrect. But does the other person understand you? Absolutely. The communication is 100% successful. The mistake is just a small cosmetic error. Prioritize communication over perfection, and you will free yourself from the chains of fear.
In fact, I want you to actively embrace mistakes. I want you to make a new goal, to make 100 mistakes this week. Go out and try to speak, and every time you make a mistake, mentally celebrate. Yes, one more piece of data for my brain. I'm one step closer to fluency. This shifts the entire dynamic. Instead of fearing mistakes, you are hunting for them. This is a game changer. It turns a stressful situation into a fun, productive challenge.
Another powerful mental shift is to stop seeing yourself as a student of English and start seeing yourself as a user of English. A student is being tested. A user is just using a tool to get a job done. When you use a hammer to hang a picture, you don't worry about using the hammer perfectly. You just focus on getting the picture on the wall. See English as your tool for connection, for learning, for fun. Your only job is to use the tool to achieve your goal, which is to connect with another human being. The quality of the tool is secondary to the quality of the connection.
And remember what we said about native speakers. They are not judges with scorecards. They are partners in communication. They will help you. They will guess your meaning. They will appreciate your effort. The only person judging you harshly is you. So give yourself the same grace and encouragement you would give to a friend who is trying to speak your language. Be your own best friend, not your worst critic.
When you release the need to be perfect, something incredible happens.
You start to take risks. You try out new words. You play with the language. And that is the zone where rapid growth happens. Fluency is not the absence of mistakes. Fluency is the ability to communicate your ideas smoothly and confidently, mistakes and all. So go out and make some glorious mistakes. They are the stepping stones to your success.
And so, we arrive at the end of this journey together. But more importantly, you're standing at the very beginning of your new life with English. This isn't a goodbye, it's a see you later. We have given you the map, the compass, and the tools. We've shown you that the wall between you and fluency was an illusion, built by ineffective methods and a fear of being imperfect. You now have the knowledge to dismantle that wall, brick by brick.
Remember the core of everything we've discussed. It all comes back to comprehensible input. Feed your brain with English that you understand and that you love. Trust the silent period. Let the language soak into your subconscious. When you speak, start small. Connect directly and chase communication, not perfection. Embrace your mistakes as the most valuable data you can collect. Shift your identity from a student to a user. These are not just tips. This is a new philosophy.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is simple. Don't let this be just another podcast you listen to. Let it be the catalyst. Take one single idea from today and act on it. Just one. Find one piece of compelling content today and apply the three-phase technique. Or decide to have a 5-minute conversation with yourself in the mirror tonight. Or make it your goal to celebrate your next 3 mistakes. Action is what transforms knowledge into power. Inertia is the only thing that can hold you back now.
You have everything you need within you. The ability to acquire language is a fundamental part of being human. You've done it before with your first language, and you can absolutely do it again. It requires patience, consistency, and a heavy dose of self-compassion. Be kind to yourself on this journey. Some days will be breakthroughs, and some days will feel like steps backward. That is completely normal. The only way to fail is to stop completely.
We are so incredibly proud of you for making it this far, for having the courage to look for a better way and the dedication to listen and learn. You are not alone in this. We are a community, all striving for the same goal. Keep going, keep listening, keep speaking, keep making those beautiful, glorious mistakes.
You have the power to change your life. You have the key to unlock a world of new connections, opportunities, and experiences. All that's left is to use it. Go out there and claim the fluent, confident English that you deserve.
Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. This is Sasha.
And this is Jerry.
From both of us, keep learning, keep growing, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.